Okay, so this is going to be on the endocrine system. I know we did it in Form 4, but you'd all switched off at that point, and now in Form 5 and 6, you're going, yeah, this is the thing that I find difficult. So I'll try to condense it down as much as I can and highlight the things that examiners are going to ask you. So the first thing that they're going to ask you is a definition for an endocrine gland and an exocrine, and it might be a distinguished question, and if it's a distinguished, you have to say something about each thing. So an endocrine is essentially a ductless gland. They secrete their hormone directly into your blood supply, whereas an endocrine gland is going to be, has ducts. So it's going, has ducts, and it releases its usually enzymes, but not exclusively. Can be things like sweat, sebum. It goes straight into a duct to where it needs to go. So just as an example, this is a poor diagram up here, but when we do the skin, when you draw skin, this is your sweat gland, this would be your sweat duct, and you'd have an opening at the top, which would be your pore. When we do the digestive system, the pancreas, gallbladder, they secrete their stuff into ducts, and they all end up in the small intestine. So that's going to be the first thing that they're going to ask, that they can ask. The next thing that they can ask is what's the differences between the nervous system and the endocrine system. So you need to recognize from the nervous system that the message that is being sent is electrical, and that it's very, very fast in how it transfers, whereas the endocrine system, and we'll talk about the definition of a hormone in a second, is a chemical method by which the message is carried, and this is much slower. So speed is a big one. So the transmission is going to be fast, this is going to be slower. The response, you get a fast response with your nervous system, and you get a much slower response. So you can think about the joy that is puberty. When you all went through it, you didn't go to sleep one night and wake up the next day and it was done. It takes some time. Then in terms of your duration, it's going to be very short with your nervous system, and this is long lasting. So again, once you start shaving, for example, you're going to do that for the rest of your life. And in terms of location-wise, the nervous system, it's a very localized area that's going to be affected, whereas in your endocrine, it is going to be widespread all over your body. Okay, you have to have a definition for a hormone. So we've just said that our endocrine system works on the basis of a chemical message. So that's where you start, or it's a chemical message produced by your endocrine gland that's going to travel in your blood to where it's going to need to work. So to maybe go to target organ or tissue, depending on what it's doing. Okay, so there are a number of places that make these hormones for us. I have this silly thing in our notes book. So 4 P's, 3 T's, a hopped, and we have to know where they all are to a degree. Usually the most important ones that we're interested in will be the pancreas and will be the thyroid, because this has a dual function. It's both an endo and an exocrine gland. So that's why this is important, your pancreas. And your thyroid, it makes thyroxine, and we talk about the feedback mechanism, or we have to understand the feedback mechanism by which thyroxine production is controlled. So what are our endocrine glands? There is your hypothalamus, and straight away in your hypothalamus, we know H for hypothalamus, H for homeostasis. So this is where homeostasis is controlled for us. Down at the bottom, it's not part of our brain, but it's called the pituitary gland. This is what's called the master gland. It makes a number of hormones, and in here by our corpus callosum in our brain, so this is the corpus callosum in our brain, is what's called our pineal gland. Now, in an ideal world, H1 candidates are going to have to, know all of these glands. Everyone else, what the pancreas and thyroid will do, and you will know some others because you'll decide you like them. Excuse me. So here in our throat, we have our thyroid gland, and over here we have what's called our parathyroid gland. They're the little 4 dots that are on this kind of butterfly right here. We have down here in our chest our thymus gland. We have our adrenal glands that sit on top of our kidneys, so everyone knows them. They'll do fight and flight for us. We also have our pancreas, which we cover when we do our digestive system. And this diagram is of a male, so these are going to be the testes in the male. And up here we have the ovaries in the female. Now, in an ideal world, as I say, you have to know a hormone that these all make. So we are going to start with the hypothalamus, and we're going to choose ADH. So we see that when we do excretion, ADH controls the amount of water that is going to be reabsorbed. So when we have ADH production, we make small volumes of urine. The reabsorbed is really important when we talk about ADH. So then we went to our pituitary gland, and as we said, it's the master gland. So this is going to make growth hormone for us. So it's making it all the time. The concentrations will get more as we head toward puberty. And what this does is it helps us to make protein. So we're making muscle with growth hormone. We then had the pineal gland, and this one makes the thing called melatonin. So this will help regulate our body clock. It helps with ovulation. So we're going to go with biological rhythms, might be better than body clock. I'll spell that wrong, aren't I? I can do this in my head. Rhythms, RHYTHMS. And ovulation. We then went to our parathyroid. So this is, as I say, on the butterfly in our throat, in our neck region. And the whole point of this is it releases calcium for bones. From bones into your plasma. Our thyroid then is really important, and as I say, this is an important one to know. This produces a hormone called thyroxine, and thyroxine controls the rate of our metabolism. So if you have an overactive thyroid, you will find that you will be losing body mass. If your thyroid is underactive, you may be gaining it. There'll be other symptoms as well. So controls our rate of metabolism. We then have our thymus, and this disappears the older you get, so it's present until puberty when it starts degenerating. So your thymus makes thymosin, and your thymosin helps your lymphocytes to mature. So it influences our immune system. What else do we have? Adrenal. So adrenal makes adrenaline, and this is a flight or fight response. So your fight or I'm doing this badly. Apologies. So it is going to be fight or fright response. So when we get scared, we'll either run away. It'll give us adrenaline, so our heart will pump harder, our lungs will work, we'll get more oxygen, we'll be able to run away. And similarly, if you're going to stay and fight, then it's going to kick in there. So we've also said our pancreas is the other one. Its exocrine function is it makes insulin. its endocrine function is it makes insulin. It makes it, I just like the words, as you know, I like certain words. They're called the islets of Langerhans, is where they get made on your pancreas. So actually in your pancreas, if you can see it, it's going to have these dots in it, and these are our islets of Langerhans. And the whole point of this, of insulin, is it causes our cells to absorb glucose. It removes it from our blood. And obviously if you're diabetic, you will not have your pancreas will not produce insulin for you. So the insulin is its endocrine function. Okay, so this is a definitely need to know. Our ovaries then, for females, they are going to produce estrogen and estrogen and progesterone, and we will do them when we do human reproduction. So estrogen helps with the egg maturing. Progesterone is progestation, so this is eggs maturing, and the progesterone will maintain your endometrium if you are pregnant. That is its job. And just having it there prevents you going into labor. And then for the gents, we get testosterone production, and that is going to be in sperm production. I've spelled that wrong, haven't I? So we try again. Testosterone. Okay, sperm production. And again, as I say, we talk more about these when we get to form 6 and we do our human reproduction. So just to put it aside and just to be aware, pancreas. Pancreas is a dual hormone. It has an exocrine function, which is in the digestive system. Okay, it is going to make pancreatic amylase and lipase. And you should be in your head now saying amylase breaks down what? So amylase is going to work on starch, and it's going to convert it to maltose for us. It is also going to produce pancreatic lipase. And again, lipase are going to work on lipids, and they're going to put it into fatty acids and glycerol. Now, both of these will secrete into the small intestine. So they're going to secrete their enzymes into the small intestine. Specifically the duodenum, the duodenum, however you wish to pronounce it. They go in here. So that's the exocrine function, and that is a need to know. And as you said earlier, the endocrine function is going to come from, it's going to produce insulin. It's going to produce that insulin in the islets of Langerhans. It's going to go straight into your blood supply. And its job is to make cells absorb glucose. Okay, so the other thing that we have said in terms of things that you need to know is about thyroxine. So thyroxine is made in your thyroid gland. Its job is that it controls the rate of metabolism. We have to be aware of a deficiency and of an excess. So if we don't make enough thyroxine in children, they have a thing called cretinism. And what that is because their metabolism is so low, it impairs them mentally and physically, their development. Because think about it, little kids are growing really, really fast, and now we have low metabolism, so it'll impair their mental and physical development. Okay, so what they do for this is that little babies, they do what's called a heel prick test at birth, and if levels are too low, thyroxine will be given. So that's underproduction in children. In adults then, if you're not making enough, you will have a reduction in your weight, because that makes sense. Your metabolism, you will be tired, you'll have no energy, just things will not be good. There will be a build-up of fluid, and we see that because the thyroid as well will swell, so the neck becomes very, very, very swollen, and they call it goiter. And if that is the case, they will either give you thyroxine tablets as the fix, or they will actually give you iodine, because iodine is necessary for thyroxine to function properly. Okay, so there are underproductions in those. So this is adults, and this is underproduction in children. Now, if we get overproduction, so this is under, if we get overproduction, what happens now? So if that is the case, again, you have a really high metabolic rate, because you have more thyroxine than you need. You will have bulging eyes. You will be nervous, irritable, hot, because you're generating loads of heat now through respiration. We call it Graves' disease. And what we do for it sometimes is we surgically remove part of the thyroid, or we use radioactivity to actually kill part of the thyroid. So you just need to be aware of both of those. So thyroxine controls the rate of metabolism. If there's underproduction, what does that look like? If there's high production, what does that look like? And how do we treat it? Now, the last thing that we have to know, let's see, can I find it? It's going to be up here, is how do we control the amount of thyroxine levels? So it works on what's called a negative feedback mechanism. So, if you turn on your oven and you turn it up to 180 and it takes time to get to your 180, eventually once it hits 180, it'll turn itself off. Once it falls below your 180, maybe to 170, it turns itself back on, and it keeps doing that. So when we talk about in terms of ends of hormones, one hormone will stimulate the production of another. So what does that mean in terms of thyroxine? So we are looking at an enzyme TSH, it's called. So that's our TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, is going to influence whether or not thyroxine is actually produced. So if you have in your blood normal concentrations of thyroxine, then you're not going to make TSH. So normal concentrations of thyroxine gets no T. There'll be no TSH produced. But if we have low concentrations of thyroxine, so if you have a little look at the picture up here, if you have low concentrations now of our thyroxine, you are going to get TSH produced in your pituitary, and that's going to travel then in your blood to your thyroid. So it's going to travel to your thyroid, and that is going to stimulate thyroxine production. So low levels release TSH, and it stimulates thyroxine production. Okay. If though you have low levels of thyroxine and you do release the TSH, but there's not enough iodine, so if there's not enough iodine in your system, we now get the goiter, because we've got loads of thyroxine there, but your throat will swell up, and you then need to increase the iodine in your diet to solve that problem. Okay, so your pituitary and your TSH don't know there's not enough iodine, so they're going to make you keep making thyroxine, and as we said, we will end up having to input iodine in our diet to get the thyroxine out of our thyroid and able to work. Okay, and then again, once the thyroxine is used up, we go back to normal concentrations of thyroxine. That's our negative inhibition. We get no TSH made. They can ask you for examples of hormone supplements, and you get the choice of what you want to use. So lack of insulin is a nice one because that ties up with knowing about our exocrine and endocrine function. You get high blood glucose, which we don't want, and it'll also be in your urine. You'll be thirsty with it. You'll lose weight with it. And therefore then we give insulin injections as our treatment for this. Obviously you're also watching what you eat, but you're monitoring that at the same time. So insulin has to be injected into muscle. We can't take it as a tablet, and the reason for that is because it wouldn't survive going through the stomach. So we can't take it as a tablet because it would be digested by our enzymes. So that's one that you might decide you like. Another one, just because we're a rugby playing school, maybe that anabolic steroids. So anabolic is when you're going small molecules to big molecules. You need energy to do this. It's got nothing to do with your cat eating you, because that is catabolic. But anabolic steroids, the reason people take them is it builds up muscles for you. It works like testosterone. So you can sometimes hear about what's called roid rage, where you're just very, very aggressive. It's not a good thing. So the bad things of it, especially in males, it'll cause infertility. It actually makes your testicles shrink. You will have the roid rage. Could end up being impotent because of it, and you will have, if females take it, you get male traits in females. Okay, and obviously anabolic steroids, they don't use them in cattle, or you don't want to have them in your cattle for your because there's a fear it'll get into your food chain, and then we're now ingesting it. So if I was studying the endocrine system, the things that I would focus on would be your definitions over here of your exo and your endo. I'm going to go with yellow. So your exo and your endo, just having an idea of what's the difference between your nervous system and your endocrine system. Obviously, you are going to make sure that you have a definition for a hormone. That is important. Again, it's up to you whether or not you want to know all of the different parts. Some of them will stay in your head because you'll just like them. But in reality, definitely it is going to be your pancreas down here. What is its endocrine function? And it is going to be your thyroid, because we have to know about the negative feedback portion of it, and also the underproduction and overproduction of it. And as I say, the pancreas over here is good to know because it has both endocrine and exocrine function, and we talk about it in digestion. So I hope that all makes sense. Ask me if you need help.